every CCAP meeting will not be possible if not for the kind-heartedness of our sponsors. And this afternoon, we're very fortunate to have our sponsor, Regius. And I'd like to call on our first speaker who will talk about their company more. He is the country manager for Philippines, Regius Philippines, and he oversees Regius's strategic growth and operations across this region. He leads a number of teams dealing with sales, marketing, operations, finance, human resource management, customer service, and training. Ladies and gentlemen, this person is very busy. He's a very busy gentleman. His responsibilities includes generating partnerships, handling business products, and driving sales. And if you must know, Regius is the world's largest provider of flexible workplaces and currently operates its more than 2,000 locations across 100 countries with approximately one new center operating somewhere in the world. Okay, to talk more about Regius and how they can help our association, our industry, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome their country manager, Mr. Lars Wittig.
I'm very glad and honored to be here today and to be able to speak to such a relevant forum, because as it may come as a surprise to some, business continuity plans is actually one of our key products, but not what we are most notably known for, namely which is serviced office space, office hotels, if you will. I myself, I moved to the Philippines 22 years ago and unfortunately still do not speak any Tagalog, so please bear with that. But I know the country pretty well, and therefore I also tried a little bit of everything in terms of calamities and other threats that can affect us. I have a presentation for you. As mentioned, I'm from Denmark, and so was Hans Christian Andersen, very much known for his stories. And I have a story to tell today, and that is about the Hurricane Sandy. If you remember, Hurricane Sandy was going up along the U.S. East Coast and made landfall in the New York tri-state area and had incredibly devastating effect with extremely many deaths even in New York City. So I actually have a presentation on exactly how that happened and how business continuity was implemented afterwards, relying on this network of business centers that Regius is offering. Yes, we call it a dynamic recovery in the eye of the storm. And again, it is on this specific case that I will be presenting. First of all, let me just, so that you have an idea about what is Regius or what does it look like. A Regius center has typically a suite size of anywhere from 1,000 to 2,000 square meters. In those square meters, 2,000 square meters, we have office suites, we have campuses, we have team rooms, we have boardrooms, we have meeting rooms, pantry, a lot of shared facilities, business lounge, and all types of flexible workspaces for any type of situation. So you can drop in just to sit and work for 2 hours, or you can sign up for an office for 1 day or for 1 year, entirely depending on your needs. But that is what a center looks like, and that is what one can rely on in terms of business continuity. Okay, a glance of where we are globally. If you are just a member, or you can buy a membership, or you can take a small office or a huge office for 10 people, 100 people, one person, doesn't matter. As soon as you are part of the Regius family, you have access to every single location that we have. And we are currently in 103 countries, 750 cities with more than 2,000 locations. Here in the Philippines, we have grown, especially in the more recent years, and we now have 12 locations in Metro Manila. I will get back to which ones those are. And we have also opened the first center outside Metro Manila, namely in Cebu. And we continue this very aggressive expansion. Okay. Hurricane Sandy, when it hit the U.S. East Coast, the impact can basically be summarized as this: 4.5 million homes were without power. So almost 5 million homes, no electricity. Over 1 million businesses were affected. Flights, 12,000 cancelled. Ground transportation halted. Obviously, every element here is affecting business, because when the calamity hits, and when it hits here in the Philippines also, what should we rely on? And we will go through the different options of static or dynamic alternatives, working from home, etc. But it's very difficult to find the perfect answer when there's no electricity at home, for example. So again, for sure, you're not going to, when the calamity hits, you're not going, your business will be disrupted. And it will definitely, if you're not prepared. And that's obviously why, I mean, everybody are paying so much attention to it here. Now I do the typical mistake. Static recovery. Static obviously means it is something that doesn't move. So you have your traditional business location, and now in case something goes wrong, you would like to have an alternative. Now, if something happens to your traditional location, it could be that there are some welders working on putting on a new roof, they are careless, and there's a fire in the building. In that case, it's fine and dandy that you have a static alternative, because it was not a calamity that put the city or half of the country out of commission, so you can basically rely on that other alternative. But when a storm like Sandy hits, or Yolanda, etc., then that one alternative, that static or those static alternatives can be affected just as much. So that is a very vulnerable way of doing it. How come that some people rely on it anyway? Well, it depends what industry you are in. Because there are still people who will say, this is the way for us. Are there anybody, well, I assume there are people from the banking industry here. Banking industry will often rely on static. The reason is they cannot afford the flexibility on relying on data in the cloud, because of bank secrecy is very, very delicate, sensitive information. So they need to have alternative sites set up beforehand, where the data and servers and so on are already set up. So that is their only way of doing it, but they are also exposing themselves to a high risk there. So generally speaking, it's not the perfect solution at all, far from, but it can be a solution that you're more or less forced into, as, for example, operating as a bank. Home working. That's another one. I mean, we're even talking about flexible work right now in the Philippines, because we are losing so much productivity being stuck in traffic, correct? So a lot of businesses, I know Procter & Gamble, a lot of the really big ones, they're encouraging people to work from home. And government has also been talking about only 4 days work weeks. I think even the palace now are talking about that. And the problem is just that in the example of Sandy, 4.8 million homes were without electricity. In the case of the Philippines, even without a calamity, starting next year, we cannot be sure that we have power at home. And I don't know about your homes, but in my home, my internet works okay every second day. So it's not really the most professional place to work either. So, okay, we have the traditional workplace, and we have the home. But isn't there something in between that possibly could be an alternative also? And that is where the dynamic recovery comes in. That means dynamic means that you have several options of places to go to in case of a calamity. The storm came and hit an area. The eye of the storm, Sandy, this was the size of France. Within that area, the tri-state area with New York up there with the most markers and so on, we have we had 150 Regis centers. Okay, and what happened was that out of those centers, we had 800 employees, and 90% of those, they were able to report to work the next day, the day after the storm hit. There were no other business that could claim the same. And they were like absolutely puzzled how our people were able to make it to work when their people were not. Well, it was very simple because, for example, one of our global top managers, he lives in Connecticut. And every day he would go to work in Boston. And when the storm hit, he was like, I'm going to make it to the office. So he gets in his car and he can't even get out his driveway because a tree is blocking his driveway. So he goes out with a chainsaw, he starts cutting it up and the logs is pulled to the side, then he gets out to the road. Then he tries to make a right to make it to Boston. He can't, there's another tree, so now he's sick and tired of chopping up trees, so he makes a left. So he ends up going to work in White Plains instead, but he made it to work, right? And that's exactly the same as we did with our employees. We say, you go to work wherever you can make it to. So assuming that your home is okay, because you can also you must always consider the human factor. If the home is affected, who is going to leave for work when your loved ones are with water inside the living room and so on? Nobody are. So okay, the home is not affected. Your regular office maybe is not affected either. But somewhere in between, you can just not make it there. Then you go to the best possible alternative, and the dynamic effect is that you go, in our case, if you subscribe to our services for business continuity, you go to the nearest Regis center near you that you can access, obviously. Okay, here comes some statistics about how many companies we help. We have companies that are just holding virtual office. We have companies that simply subscribe to the business continuity plan, and everybody have preference. So we helped, I think it shows later on the slides how many companies that we actually helped out. But most companies that came to us for help, they were not our existing customers, and they did not have a business continuity plan with us. So even if we had space, generally when we have the calamities, just like the flooding in August last year here, we opened every single center, but less than 10% of the customers showed up. So we have plenty of capacity, but we turn people away if they're not our customers already, because you need to have priority. So with a business continuity plan, you have priority, and we turn everybody else away. So the future of resilience, it's pretty much a combination of all factors. I'm not here to say that dynamic is the way to go. I'm not going to say that it is working from home. I'm not going to say it is static, because I can basically argue equally well for why each one of them will not work or might be affected, so it will not work. But I think it is important for each and every of your businesses that you consider a combination of all three of them. And that might pretty much be the end of it. Let me see. Okay, we had, then since Sandy we have opened another 30 centers and so on. Often people, they wonder, but how can you fit all of us? I mean, I have customers here who have signed up for maybe up to 300 people in case something happens. I have hundreds of computers on storage to be pulled out in case of calamities. But the thing is that a lot of customers, they will not make it to any center at all, and I all the time open new centers, and it takes a year or two before we fill them up. I just opened 4 new centers, and my time is running out, so I think I will just try to localize it as much. Yeah, if you can try to. Because there should be. Okay, this is basically where we are today. We have 12 centers in Metro Manila. Going up, the first one is down 1 Ecom by the Bay Area. And then we have 4 centers in Makati, 2 in Bonifacio Global City, 1 in Ortigas, 1 in Eastwood, 1 in Cubao. Then we have, we just opened last week in Manila, Times Plaza, and earlier this year also down in Alabang. Obviously, when you're considering the different sites, etc., if you need to consider only a few, you need to think about where are the fault lines, and you need to consider where are the electrical grids, just like we did back in the early 90s, if some of you remember that. That's pretty much it from me. What I always tell foreigners when they ask about the need for this is that I don't know any other country that has so many risks to business. Because, I mean, it's not just a matter about typhoons and earthquakes and tsunamis and volcanoes, and we have extreme examples. I mean, in this category is also rioting and, I will obviously not call it right. We had the People's Revolution, we had martial law, we still have insurgency problems. I mean, more fun in the Philippines should not be the slogan, but we definitely, you ask for it, we pretty much have everything to offer here that put business at risk, and these are businesses in many cases, especially in all of your cases, that business globally are relying on. Okay, thank you very much for your attention and your time. Thanks.
Good afternoon. All right, thank you for attending our special membership meeting for this is more of the launching of our BCP Council for our industry. Me together with John